Hello everybody, my name is Caitlin and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things horror, and today I'm very excited to get to talk about the latest installment in the Evil Dead franchise, Evil Dead Rise. I was lucky enough to get to see this film a couple of weeks ago when it premiered at South by Southwest, and I'll just say off the bat here that I loved this film. I think it's an excellent addition to this franchise. I highly recommend going out to the theaters and seeing this film and supporting it, especially if you are a big fan of the Evil Dead franchise. I think this film has a lot to offer you, and I think that there's a lot here, especially gore-wise, that audiences are really going to like. I will say off the bat here that Evil Dead is not one of my top horror franchises, but I do very much enjoy all of the films within the franchise. I enjoyed the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series, and I even liked the remake or requel that came out, I think in 2013, that Fede Alvarez directed. I know not everyone is a fan of the 2013 film, but I did think it was interesting how they used the Deadites as a way to metaphorically explore problems around addiction. And I feel like Evil Dead Rise does something similar where it's using the Deadites to explore certain themes. The film is certainly not as dark or as bleak as the 2013 film. It does have a sense of humor to it, but it's also not in the vein of being slapstick comedy and very over-the-top humor in the way that Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness is. There is a balance between the horror and the comedy, and I'll say that if you are a fan of the films of the franchise that tend to lean more towards the horror and the darkness, this film definitely embodies more of that feel rather than the comedy. What's interesting about this film is the way that it uses the Evil Dead lore to explore themes such as motherhood. If you've seen any of the trailers or promotional material, you'll know that themes around family and mothers is definitely getting pushed heavily. And I thought that was a really interesting angle to take because it's exploring different fears and anxieties that come with motherhood and being a mom. I'm going to be getting a little bit into spoilers now. I'm not going to give anything major away, but if you want to go in completely surprised, then I would say turn the video off now. So the film centers on these two female characters. You have Ellie, who is the mother that gets possessed by the Deadites that you see in all the trailers and promotional material. And what you learn about her fairly quickly throughout the film is that she is a single mother. She's currently getting divorced and is having to raise 3 children on her own. And the film definitely establishes the frustrations and hardships that come with having to be a single parent. There's also a lot of anxiety for her around the fact that she is no longer able to afford the apartment that her family is living in, and they are going to have to move soon. So you have a character that's having all of these internal struggles, and she's trying to keep it together for her children. And so what's interesting is that when the Deadites come and they end up possessing her, the Deadites very much become the kind of manifestation of all of these fears and frustrations that she's been having. And so while the 2013 Evil Dead film was using the Deadites as a metaphor for addiction, I think you can definitely read the Deadites in this film as a metaphor for a lot of the frustrations and just darker sides that come with motherhood. The other main character here is Beth, who is Ellie's sister. And again, minor spoilers, although you find this out within like the first 5 minutes of the film, but it is revealed that Beth is pregnant. It is an unplanned pregnancy. And so the struggle for her is just this realization that she's going to become a mom and questioning if she really wants that lifestyle, if she wants to terminate the pregnancy. And so the Deadites are also playing on those fears as well. They taunt Beth about her unplanned pregnancy throughout the film. There's one scene that still sticks out in my mind where Beth discovers that one of the other characters in the film has become possessed by a Deadite, and the Deadite is just mocking her and her fears about this unplanned pregnancy. And they begin eating like shattered glass, and you can see like the shards of glass are starting to like stick out of their throat. And they make comments that they're eating glass so that they can kill the bad thing that's growing inside their tummy. Like just really kind of nasty stuff like that the Evil Dead franchise is known for and really good at. But I do like how the film was using the Deadites Deadites to explore these different fears around motherhood, whether it's the anxieties of already having children and needing to take care of them, or the anxieties of becoming a parent and not know if you're suitable enough to care for a child. I felt like those themes were very interesting and not something that this series has explored before. I'll also say too that while this film is dealing with themes around family and mothers and sisterhood, like, it's still not afraid of killing certain characters off or tormenting certain characters in very gross, gruesome ways. Like, just because there's children involved here does not make them safe. So this film is not afraid of killing its characters off. It does not do any cop-outs, unlike another sequel of a franchise that just came out recently. And like all great Evil Dead movies, this one does not shy away from the gore. There are a lot of very gnarly scenes throughout this film. There's a ton of blood in this film, right? They even do the homage to The Shining, where you have the elevator doors open and it's just gallons and gallons of blood rushing out. So if you come to these films for the gore, you are not going to be disappointed. And speaking of the characters, I also want to give a shout out to the two lead actresses of this film. I have to look up their names because they're very similar and I get them confused. So the actresses are Elisa Sutherland, who plays Ellie, and Lily Sullivan, who plays Beth. I thought both of these actors did an incredible job in their roles. The character of Beth reminded me a lot of Stretch from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. And Stretch is one of my favorite horror heroines ever, so that's maybe why I really liked the character of Beth here. They both just kind of have that cool rocker chick vibe going on. And then I think Alicia Sutherland gives one of the best performances as a Deadite in this entire franchise. She is so good and so creepy in the role. I was lucky enough to catch a Q&A with the cast and crew at South by Southwest before the film premiered. And during the panel, she was talking about her inspiration for getting into the head of a Deadite. And she was saying that she drew a lot from Jim Carrey's The Mask. And when you see the film, you can totally see that. Like, she is just embodying both the evil and nastiness of the Deadites, but there's also a certain glee and a certain joy to her performance as well. So she's amazing. They're both amazing, and it's really awesome to see women getting to play these very cool, badass roles. Another thing that I really liked about Evil Dead Rise is that it is not a film that's interested in jumping on this recent trend of legacy sequels. All I will say is that if you're going into this film hoping that certain characters from the previous films are going to show up, I'll tell you right now that they are not. They do not show up in the film. They do not show up in any kind of post-credits sequence. This film is really its own thing, and it's much more interested in expanding on the mythology that was set up in previous installments, rather than relying on characters from the previous films to move the story along. And so I liked that. This film still has the influence of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. They were executive producers on this film, but I liked that they took the chance to actually say, look, we're doing something new here, and we're really doing something new, which I feel like is a lot different from a lot of the legacy sequels that we've been getting, which want to claim that they're doing something new and bringing something new to the franchise, but then they just fall into the same old storylines and rely on the same old characters again and again. I also think this film does a great job of utilizing the new setting, of setting this franchise in an apartment building. You do get a brief scene that takes place at a cabin in the woods at the beginning of the film, again, just to kind of help you establish yourself and reacquaint yourself with the Evil Dead universe. But then it goes right into the city setting and into the apartment. It was really cool to see how they would homage certain scenes from the original Evil Dead, but recreate them in a way that feels more modern, more technological. So overall, I loved this film. I'm glad I got to see it in a packed house with a rambunctious audience that was also loving it. Well, except for that one heckler guy that was in the audience that some of you have probably heard about and seen videos of.
This movie fucking sucks. Shut
He's storming out. He's storming like he's sitting out.
What are you doing here? Get the fuck out of here.
People have been saying that was staged. I'm not entirely sure if I believe that. Where I was sitting in the audience, I was able to look up and see the balcony where this guy was sitting. Like, he was just up on the balcony sitting there, and he had his feet dangling over the balcony. And so the South by Southwest volunteers were going up to him, and it looked like they were trying to shake him awake, or I don't really know what was going on. And then I saw this whole exchange with him, and he was trying to show them something on his phone. I don't know, maybe it was the script that they had worked out, if this was staged. But then he just kind of went storming out. The only thing that was weird, I will say, is that as we were all exiting the theater, he was still around. Like, he was outside the Paramount Theater and still shouting about how much the movie sucked and how much he hated it. And I thought that was weird that they were just letting him like hang around the theater even after that outburst. So I don't know, maybe it was staged, maybe it's just meant to get publicity. Again, the film doesn't really need to drum up this kind of controversy or publicity because it is a good film. It can stand on its own perfectly fine. So those are my thoughts on Evil Dead Rise. The theater that I work at is also going to be doing an advanced screening of it in a couple of weeks, and I'm actually excited to get to go see it again. Let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you so much for watching.